I feel like this guy needs to wear a camera 24/7 and just be promoting what that's happening. Even if he's not explaining things, he's showing what's happening in front of himself. I feel like his career is probably stable enough where he's not competing. Welcome back to Hand-ufacturing. I'm Michael Joy, and Kay has picked out a video for us today, something about special effects. I think we saw this before, but I don't remember it. So let's go alien.
Along with thousands and thousands of others.
Oh, it was made by Wired, so this is a proper production.
Monster masks and creator of countless creatures.
Jordu Schell. German?
MDB.
Oh, he's seen some things.
You'll notice it looks a little big. Welcome to my studio. This is where I do my job of designing creatures for movies and television and video games.
All right, can you draw something on the fly for us?
I probably could, yeah.
All right, draw something on the fly.
I can do anything I want. Thank you for asking.
I would say that the first step is just start laying down geometric shapes and the large forms to try to get the look you're after. Some gills. What I like to do is sketch it out and then get more definition. There are pencils and then there are inks. So the pencils establish the rough layout, and then inking is where you really define the specificity of your look. I don't know if this necessarily captures exactly what was described. It's a fish man. I don't know if it gets across hunter. It certainly looks mean.
And what's his name?
I don't know, it looks like a Dave to me. He's not really a monster, but he's a monster of a person. I think monsters represent a powerful being, but it's something that is concrete and can be dealt with very directly. David slays Goliath. King Kong falls off a very tall building. These dangerous, bad things can just be dealt with and they're gone and it's over. And that's kind of a fantasy because rooting out evil in real life is much more complex and much more difficult than that.
Putting down his pencil and pen, Jordu picks up a new set of tools to sculpt, mold, and paint his designs from the page into a three-dimensional mask.
In order to start the sculpting process, I take water-based clay and I just start building up a face shape. And I'm just gonna do this out of my imagination for expediency's sake. I'm just sort of...
I don't have anything to say. It's just interesting to watch.
To be honest, I don't exactly know where it's gonna go. You know, as a matter of fact, it might change a great deal as I go. I use an enormous amount of clay. Every month I probably order several hundred pounds. One of the things about creating is that you do get into kind of a Zen mode. Time goes by and you don't even realize how much time is passing. The act of creating
That's for sure.
is so pleasurable. I mean, it's addicting. It really is. So I'm putting eye forms in, which are just spheres, plastic spheres that
I feel like it's sacrilegious to interrupt this guy, but there's some good things to be said here. What he's talking about is the Zen space of creating. It's true. He's creating his creation, though, so it's really a work of art, and it's easy to go in. His mind is occupied in a different way. He's probably got some sort of ratio between pleasing himself and pleasing the client. I don't know what that ratio is, but there's a lot that he gets to please himself. He's not just making shoes for disposable sort of level. The other thing is when he popped that eye in, it made me think about prefab shapes. If you're a model maker or somebody into monsters and you are not aware of the glorious spectacle that taxidermy holds, look at the taxidermy catalogs. You can buy, like when you kill your bear, you motherfucker, and you stuff it and you put a jaw in there. That jaw comes from a taxidermy company, and it's these plastic teeth. You can get all these plastic pieces, alligator skulls. You can buy papier-mâché rhinoceroses. There's a lot of amazing shapes available from that industry, and it was fascinatingly grotesque to me. But you can buy eyes there too. Lots of beautiful, beautiful eyes in the taxidermy world.
Establish the shape of the eyeball, that once we mold it, we'll make a nice clean shape in there because the plaster will record the nice clean shape of the sphere. But
He's just in his living room, you know?
what is going to bring us the most character? What is going to affect the viewer the most? If it's adding teeth, it's adding teeth. If it's giving the eyes a more sinister feel, if it's scrapping it and starting over. The whole point is to bring out the most and the best character you can. So it's not necessarily going to look exactly like this, but almost all of this is just by way of establishing the kind of feel I want. I know I want
What, do you rough that in 40 minutes?
detail. I've added these sort of braided looks to them, and eventually I want them to kind of feel almost like tree branches or gnarled roots. So everything I've done is very deliberate in the sense that it takes my character
Oh, those eyes look good.
where I think it should go.
Jordu's love of monsters has been a central part of his imagination since his childhood.
I grew up in the 1970s and the early 80s, and
He's younger than me.
masks were becoming actually a very competitive art form. I wanted to know how these things were made from a very early age. So when I was 14 or so, I started trying to figure out how to make latex.
If he made that at 14, he's rock.
Little snippets of information from magazines like Fangoria and Cinemagic, and I started to kind of get a general idea. The first really professional mask I ever did was a very simple demon mask that I did when I was about 17. It had a slick finish to it that I just hadn't achieved.
Come on.
Eventually, I got offers from mask companies throughout the United States to come work for them. The first film I worked on was a piece of called The Bride of Reanimator, the sequel to The Reanimator, which is a kind of fun movie, but The Bride of Reanimator is terrible.
But no matter the movie, he loves making masks. After a multi-day process of
Okay, here's what's happening. So I got to talk about something, right? I mean, he's just fun to watch. He's so in the space and so confident and so comfortable. And it's just like, oh yeah, the first movie was shit, you know? As far as the mold goes, this is a plaster mold. And what he's got here is, looks like latex that he's brushing in. Some latexes you can pour in and you let them soak like a slip casting mold. And other latexes you brush in and sort of let them dry out layer by layer. I don't know which one he's doing, but looks like layer by layer.
layering plaster onto a sculpture and pouring latex into a plaster mold, a final shape of the mask is produced.
So now
It's awesome.
we're at the beginning of the painting process, and we've got our blank latex piece here, and I mixed up a base color in acrylic paint, and I'm just going to start by brushing it on with a big chip brush, just like this. The colors you use and the base colors you choose can be anything under the sun
He needs to have master classes, you know?
to have on viewers. I want people to feel like this is sort of a whimsical, almost H.R. Puffin stuff kind of character. So for you young kids, that was a show on TV.
I remember.
Go. Then the next step I often do is spattering. So I take a very thin down acrylic ink, a cut down chip brush, and I start spattering the color on it. The point of the spattering is to make the skin more convincing because skin of almost any kind isn't just one flat color. And this helps to kind of simulate that appearance. It's really just a matter of what I think is going to work, and I paint.
I hate to interrupt. I mean, it's so good. As much as I'm interested in his technical process and how easy he makes it look, like he knows exactly where he's going. He's not guessing at how to spatter. He's like, oh, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. At his level of business activity, I'm also interested in the stories, not just the mask. What was the interaction like working with that production? How did you get those jobs? Was it just accident and somebody hires you? How did you decide what to charge? How did you realize that you undercharged? When did you begin to get your true market value? All of these things in the business aspect, I think these master classes would be very helpful for. That's why I, as a craftsman, want to get through some of the technical stuff and start talking about the business aspect of it. Because if you're a craftsperson and you're doing this as a hobby, that's one thing. But if you want to move it into your business or improve your business, I got to get to the point where I can talk about some of the stories about what I learned with contracts and other things. That's just as valuable to solve that gap between artist and business person.
And it's so many things that it becomes sort of
It's like an art supply store up here. Look at this, you know. Oops.
Now I'm using an airbrush, which is to a spray paint can what a baseball bat is to a toothpick. It can do extremely fine mists of paint. In fact, this particular airbrush can get down to a hair's width. Painting realistic characters means layers and layers of color and blending them as artfully as you can, and that's how you will result in good-looking art.
After painting in the eye details, Jordu applies his own epoxy mixture to create a natural wet look for the eyes and nose as a final touch.
That's awesome.
So this is what a finished mask looks like. It's got the epoxy on the eyes and the mouth and the nose. The paint job is finished. You could always take it further with hair work or more intricate painting if you chose. But for now, this is essentially how I do a mask.
This is just one example of a finished mask. Jordu can add infinite details to make each mask unique.
So this is one of my masks. This one is meant to feel considerably more realistic. You can see that there's a tremendous amount of detail in it.
Oh.
This is an example of mask making taken to its most elaborate conclusion. Most of the hair is glued on in the back, and then as you approach the hairline, it's punched in one by one with a needle. The sculpture isn't very complicated, but the hair makes it feel very convincing.
Yeah.
This one is my interpretation of the creature from the Black Lagoon. This one also comes complete with a translucent acrylic fin that has to be cut and made separately. To attach the fin, you have to go with layer after layer of thickened rubber to put it into the trough that I sculpted into the mask. And that way, it's totally part of the mask. It's really cool to be well known among the mask community at large, but I think the most gratifying thing is knowing that I've influenced a generation of mask makers who now are doing their own stuff based on my work, and there are a lot of young up-and-comers who are quite extraordinary, way better than I was at that age. What's interesting to me is that I've taken such a niche part of the planet, something that's really quite absurd, and turned it into my life's passion. It's endlessly fascinating to me. There's something about the idea of coming up with a new life form and breathing enough life into it that other people believe it. It's just the most exciting thing in the world for me.
So he's described what it's like to be an artist when you're in a satisfying position, because there's artists who are living this expression where they get to do exactly what he said, but they're also getting paid for it. There's a lot of other artists who are creating, and there's a emotional/nervous system reason they're creating. They have to, and either it's not about selling for them, or maybe selling is not easy for them. You know, the film industry offers a great outlet for artwork and this type of thing. So there's a market space for it that's not a gallery sort of space, although these could go in a gallery. I'm wondering what the position is that allows a master craftsman like him to be interacting with a younger generation, not just through his finished work, but through the communication of how he's doing something. I feel like this guy needs to wear a camera 24/7 and just be promoting what that's happening. Even if he's not explaining things, he's showing what's happening in front of himself. I feel like his career is probably stable enough where he's not competing. And, you know, they talk about people that are putting chips in their wrist to get scanned. I'm like, these master craftspeople should have cameras on their chest while they're working, I believe, in their studio and just walking about. See, they're monsters in their own right, but the best kind of monsters. So thanks for watching. Sports, film, and the Oscar, the Academy Awards. That's where this story is about. I helped remake the new Academy Awards 28 years ago. I was asked not to go to the press, and I didn't. So here's my story. 28 years ago, I was working in a loft in uptown Chicago in a building called the Lorelei. I had the second floor of 1922 hotel, but I was excited. I was an entrepreneur tearing it up after.